Hi, how you doing? So I wanted to discuss in this video UV mapping and some pitfalls that I've come across, and just to give a quick little tutorial on how UV mapping works and some things to look out for and some tricks that you can do. So what is UV mapping? UV mapping is the 3D modeling process of projecting a 2D image to a 3D model surface. The process projects a texture map onto a 3D object. The letters U and V denote the axes of the 2D texture because X, Y, and Z are already used to denote the axes of the 2D or the 3D object in model space. So that's just a quick little definition of what UV mapping is. And here I've got Substance Painter, and I wanted to show a problem that I came across. So I've got the simple little object here, and as I paint on it, I started to notice, hey, what's going on? Why isn't it allowing me to paint? Why isn't it allowing me to paint on? Why can't I paint on half of my object? What's going on? And so looking over here in the right panel, this square in the middle, well, that's my text. That's my texture right there. Okay, so, and these other squares represent the UV mapping to the texture. Well, so I draw in here. Well, of course I can't draw. It's not letting me draw on the rest of it because the UV mapping is extending outside of the bounds of the texture map. So I can't paint the entire thing. Here, I've painted everything that I can, and that still leaves some surfaces I can't reach. So what's going on? All right, let's jump over here to Rhino, and I'm going to pull in simple model. All right, we'll discuss UV mapping here in Rhino. So if I click on texture mapping, and then what we want to do is we want to look at the UV map. I'm going to draw the UV map out here, and we can see how each one of these surfaces, so if I click on this is the front surface, how it is applied down here. And then this would be the back, and then this would be the top and the sides and so forth. All right, so in Rhino UV mapping, it tries to apply a surface to a section on the texture map that isn't used or overlaps with anything else. Generally, when you're applying surface mapping. So we can do things like we can actually grab this and we can move it, and you see how the bricks popped because now it's applying the pixels across here to that. And if I made it bigger, then we get more pixels so it looks smaller. Okay, but here it's actually overlapping with some others, and you can do that. That's fine. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that when your UV map will be the same across all of your different types of maps. So if you have normal maps, occlusions, metallic, whatever, that the same mapping that you see for the color map here will map identically to those other texture maps. So you have to keep that in mind. If you then, like on your normal map, you wanted to have a raised or lowered like scene for the bricks, then, and say I had it overlapped like this, then you're going to get some really weird looking normal mapping going on. So it's something to keep in mind. Undo that back to its original state. So what are some different types of mapping? What I had been doing was I was using box mapping. Okay. And so all these bricks got like tiny small. Well, why is that? So if I zoom out here, we can take a look at what just happened with the UV mapping. And so if this is the texture map here, the UV mapping is now really, really big and outside of the scope of the texture. And that's what we were just seeing over in Surface Substance Painter. Now I could maybe go to this. Now what this does is it hugs, or it extends the each surface to cover as much of the texture as possible, overlapping. But what happens is if we take a look at, say, the top here, okay, you see that, how that's all scrunched up? Okay, so if you've got this here, it takes up the entire size of the texture map. So every pixel across the texture map is being displayed across this surface. But at the same time, if we were to say, look at, let's try to find an example here. Let's go with, here we go. Go with this edge. Look, so this edge, you see how it's all scrunched up like that? Well, because for the same reason that we saw this, the front face, is that it's applying every pixel across this texture into this smaller space, which is just not what we want to do. What it really needs to be is we need to shrink this down, and you see it, and now that looks right. So now it's only taking these pixels from the texture map in this area right here. Okay. And so we've got one thing that I had been doing, and this is where I realize I've been really messing up, is I just been doing box, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on, now when we use box, it utilizes a mapping space in 3. We can turn on the mapping space in 3D just to get a better idea of how this is being applied. And so what I've got here is I had it set to here. Okay. So this dotted line represents my mapping of this object in correlation to world space. And so part of the problem was that my model falls outside of the mapping area. It should have been set to this, where but of course the ends are messed up again, where it hugs the model, or at least centered on it, and then stretched to 20 by 20 by 20, where at least it encapsulates the model properly. All right. So let's also take a look at what would happen with, okay, and so we'll look at the UV mapping on that real quick. And you can see it applies pretty well to it when it's done like that. Okay, it's not as good as like how we customized it in the last video. If you're needing something quick, then boxed is fine as long as you make sure that it includes that the space includes the entire object, or the box includes the entire object, and it's not like offset somewhere. Let's see here. We can also try and see what it looked like spherical, and you can get some crazy looking looks from that. And we can do cylinders. I don't see much of a change in cylinders. Oh no, yeah, I didn't change. Here we go. Cylinders is that. Okay. And what if we wanted to do box sides only? Back to box. And go back to box. What about box sides only? So here on box sides only, it's not much different than regular box. And it depends on the model and what the surfaces are, what type of techniques. If this was a sphere, then you definitely want to go with spherical mapping. Or if it's a cylinder, like say a barrel, you want to go with cylindrical mapping. Whatever your shape is closest to looking like, then that's the type of mapping you should probably do. And it doesn't mean though that you might not need to tweak it here utilizing the UV editor. That's about it. I have several hundred models now I need to go fix. But I just wanted to make this little video to illustrate where I screwed up, and so hopefully it'll remind me and maybe help somebody else.